And we're back. This is Every Single Superpower Ranked and Explained Episode 3. This one took a little bit longer to make because your boy got COVID-19 in 2024. Apparently America's going through a bit of a COVID surge. So remember to cover your mouth when coughing and sneezing and wash your hands. You guys chose this video in my community tab, so be on the lookout because every other video in this series will be decided by you. Time manipulation is one of the most overpowered abilities ever created. After all, a time manipulator is basically half a reality warper. This ability has 5 categories based on skill level, those being basic, advanced, expert, master, and ultimate, which, as you'll see shortly, leaves me with a lot to cover, so let's get it started.
Wow, I just got a big headache.
As the lowest form of time manipulation, characters at this level are only capable of speeding up, slowing down, and stopping time. So no rewind, no time attacks, and no time travel. Technically, you could travel into the future by speeding up time and waiting, but you could never return to your original time. So you're basically just hitting fast forward on life. There are surprisingly few characters with this level of time manipulation because it's so insanely limited. And for the most part, if you have the ability to speed up, slow down, or stop time, you also have some other abilities that elevate you above the basic level. For example, Hit from Dragon Ball Super almost fell under this category because of his time skip, which is a form of temporal acceleration, but it turns out he's also stealing all of that skipped time to create a pocket dimension. That being said, I was able to find a few good examples of basic level time manip in Goldo from Dragon Ball Z, Fast Forward from We Can Be Heroes, and surprisingly, Dio Brando and Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Basic level time manipulation is most useful when replicating other abilities, like slowing down time to replicate super speed, or stopping time to replicate teleportation. Advanced level time manipulation is miles above the versatility of its basic counterpart. With this, you would gain access to chronal phasing, forward time save, probability perception, temporal senses, temporal rewind, time attacks, and timer setup. Chronal phasing is the ability to use time manip to bypass physical obstacles without causing lasting damage. Reading directly from the Superpower Wiki, the user can utilize short-range time travel in order to bypass any opposing blockade, either by jumping ahead a few decades or eons to the point where anything standing in their path no longer exists, or temporarily aging the impediment into dust in a matter of seconds before the effect reverses itself, giving the illusion of walking through solid substances. The mechanics behind this phenomena can be attributed to the aspect of one desynchronizing from localized time, catapulting the user between any time from here to the next universal firmament at faster than superliminal speeds. Whoever wrote that was feeling themselves so hard, they busted out universal firmament. Superliminal? To be honest, even with the added context of this description, chronal phasing is a pretty confusing power. Let's say there's a wall between me and my destination. Jumping so far into the future that the wall is no longer there, crossing it and then jumping back registers more as a clever use of time travel rather than something that deserves its own name. Forward time save is stupid. It's just the ability to quick save in the present before you travel back in time. But in order for me to use forward time save, I'd have to time travel twice. Once to get to the future and bookmark that moment, and once more to get back to the past so that I could even utilize that saved moment in the future. If I were to save a moment right now, 2 seconds later it would stop being forward time save and it would become past time save. Advanced time manipulation also grants probability perception, which is the ability to perceive all variables in a situation and visualize all potential outcomes. Temporal sense, which is the ability to sense the exact date and time. And timer setup, which is the ability to set timers for various reasons. Those are all pretty self-explanatory, so we're gonna move on to time rewind. This is the main thing that separates advanced and basic level time manipulation. If you can speed up, slow down, or stop time, but you can't rewind it, then yeah, That's a pretty basic understanding of time manipulation, but just having time rewind puts you in the same group as people who have much more convoluted abilities like forward time save and chronal phasing. That's because time rewind also technically grants you temporal replay, temporal restart, temporal reload, physical restoration, temporal resurrection, temporal healing, and temporal inversion, which is insane. Specifically that last one. Temporal inversion, which taken literally would mean the ability to invert or reverse time, which is the same thing as time rewind, but where time rewind is generally focused on a finite amount of time, temporal inversion implies the reversal of all of time itself, in a more all-consuming sense than rewinding a few seconds in battle to heal a wound. With temporal inversion, you could snap your fingers and reverse the flow of the entire timeline, even beyond your own birth, or that of civilization, or the Earth, or the sun. This would be an interesting sort of suicide move or doomsday device, because if I were to invert the flow of time and wait 23 years, then I would be erased too, right? And if I'm gone, then there's no one to reverse my powers, so everything would die. Just imagine walking into Disney HQ like, give us Battlefront 3 or I'll invert time, bitch. I got nothing to lose. Achieving advanced level time manip also means you've unlocked time attacks, which is crucial for contending with higher tiers using time manip. Time attacks is one of those vague abilities that really encompasses every offensive use of time manipulation. If I were to actually explain everything that comes under this ability, we would actually be here for hours. So here's a list of what stood out to me under its applications: missile generation, omnidirectional time waves, optic blasts, scattershot, sword beam emission, time blasts, and time infusion. That's 8 abilities right there out of the 27 applications of time attacks, which is just one facet of time manipulation. I have to keep these videos down to a certain time frame so I can get them all the way done in a timely manner, but if I'm ever lucky enough to do YouTube full time, I could literally talk about this stuff for hours and hours and never run out of content.
What if I reverse it? Another 100 years?
Kicking off the expert level, we have age manipulation. This is the ability to accelerate, reverse, or stop the age of a living being or object. It's often shown as a means of quickly dispatching enemies or obstacles by aging them to the point where they turn into dust, and is pretty damn overpowered because it bypasses conventional durability. It doesn't matter how strong you are or how weird your physiology might be, if I can manipulate your personal timeline and age you down to your newborn state, or age you up until you fall into a pile of bones, you become fodder. Expert level time manip also grants its user the ability to see into both the future and past, and psychometry, which is the ability to read the history of any person or object just by touching it. So basically low-level omniscience. Although the ability to sense so many things at once may end up being a weakness, like the way Bran from Game of Thrones turned into this dead-eyed exposition robot after gaining the ability to see all of the past, or when Dalek Khan loses his mind after gaining the ability to see the future. Granted, he also fell through the time vortex, so he was exposed to all of time and space simultaneously, which is kind of the same thing that killed Sutekh in the most recent season of Doctor Who, but it makes sense that if you can see all of the future and past, that you might just go crazy. This next one is one of my personal favorite facets of time manipulation: time theft, which is defined as the ability to steal time from other beings or objects and gain a variety of advantages from the process. I think it's hilarious that the example characters are Will Salas and Sylvia Weiss from In Time. I've seen that movie a million times and I never once made that connection. Yes, they can steal time and collect time to live forever, but these clocks on their arms are really a weakness if you ask me. Once you turn 25, the countdown starts and you get 365 more days to live unless you can get more time. But in this world, your time, your actual lifespan, is used as currency. Most of the people in this world are walking around with a day to live and they're charging 4 minutes for a cup of coffee. Notable characters with time theft include the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who and Hit from Dragon Ball Super, who I brought up earlier. When Hit uses his time skip ability, that time is taken and used to create a sort of patchwork timeline, which he can then bring in and out of existence as a pocket dimension, which is crazy to think about. Hit's power set is insane. The Weeping Angels send their victims back in time so they die before they were originally born, and then consume the original timeline in which that never happened. Every breath you might have taken in the present fuels the angel while you live on in the past, displaced from your own timeline. It doesn't really matter what form it is, time theft is a crazy ability. Expert level time manipulation also unlocks time travel. I'm not gonna go into much detail about this one because I plan on making an entire video about time travel further down the line, but obviously time travel is defined as the ability to personally traverse or send others to the future and or past. It applies to the Doctor when using his TARDIS, Cable, Hiro Nakamura from Heroes, the Pokemon Celebi, and the Flash. All of these characters use their ability to travel through time to accomplish various goals and have various means of performing these feats. The way Barry Allen and the Doctor travel through time is totally different, but you'll have to wait for the time travel video to hear about that, simply because I will waste 15 minutes talking about just this topic. So we're moving on.
We all right?
Congratulations, you have now become a 10th level master of time manipulation, which means you've unlocked alternate future display, temporal displacement, temporal looping, temporal lock, time field projection, and time stream shift. Assuming you gain access to the abilities of every level beneath you, you can already travel through time, steal entire subjective timelines, control the flow of time itself, control the flow of local time, reverse all of time itself, age your opponents to dust, and shoot time blasts. And yes, there are characters who can do the same stuff and more, like Dr. Manhattan, but with these powers you could foderize the Justice League, the Avengers, all of Naruto, all of One Piece, and Jujutsu Kaisen, and I stand by that. This is only made more evident at master level. A time loop is the best way to deal with a threat you can't actually beat. Trap them in the same second for all eternity, or just let them kill you over and over until they get bored. Alternate future display, or alternate reality display, makes you nigh unstoppable given even a minute of prep time, by allowing you to view alternate timelines and prepare for any eventual outcome, in the same way Doctor Strange does in Infinity War. Temporal displacement is the ability to separate yourself from the timeline and continue on as a sort of untethered temporal entity, which would make you immune to temporal events like paradoxes and things like timeline manipulation. It's also a means for time travel, and this isn't noted on the wiki, but this ability would also make its user acausal. If I'm unbound by time, I'm also unbound by the laws of cause and effect. I could be wrong, but I'd say a user of temporal displacement would also have a causality type 5. Temporal lock is just another way of separating oneself from the active time stream. The difference is that temporal lock basically puts you in physical stasis based on a single moment in time, meaning nothing can happen to you because your physical form is temporally locked into the state it was in that moment, or at least that's how I understand it. Time field projection is pretty straightforward. It's the ability to manipulate time within a certain area. Having this ability would also give you temporal displacement, because if I make a drastic enough change within my time field, the natural flow of time would become irrelevant. And the final power of master level time manipulation is time stream shift, which is the ability to travel to parallel time streams or shift your personal time stream. Let's say there's a time stream that moves 10,000 times faster than natural time. If you were to enter that time stream, the entire universe would stand still for an eternity from your perspective, which would essentially simulate super speed. You can also achieve the opposite effect by entering a much slower timeline and allowing time to accelerate around you. But this doesn't have any real uses outside of skipping time, which you can do more efficiently with actual time travel or even basic level time manip through temporal acceleration. After 10,000 years, we've made it to the absolute peak of time manipulation. And I don't want to waste any time with an intro, so we're getting right into causality manipulation. Reading directly from Superpower Wiki, users can manipulate causality, the relationship between causes and effects, allowing them to decide what happens and what doesn't, when and how. There's no need for a why, however, as the why of something is determined by causality itself, which is the user's command, making it one of the few powers that reasonably don't need a reason. This means I can do whatever I want. I'm literally God. Nothing I do or am needs to make any sense, because I control cause and effect. The general applications literally just say all creation, all destruction, all manipulation. This ability is honestly gonna need its own video as well, because on top of its 16 signature applications, it also has 3 levels of skill that categorize its components even further. Next up is meta time manipulation, which is the ability to manipulate time on a multiversal scale. It's the same thing as what some people would call absolute time manipulation. Just for fun, I'll read you the description. Users can manipulate the time of any and all realities, dimensions, and universes, whether they're physical locations such as entire universes or metaphysical locations such as heaven, hell, or even the dream world. And under applications, it also lists all temporal abilities, along with higher temporal manipulation and temporal embodiment. Ultimate time manipulation also grants omnichronal perception, which is the ability to perceive every event across all of the infinite timelines simultaneously, which is just omniscience, but omnichronal perception sounds so much cooler, so I'll give it a pass on being unnecessary. With this level of time manip, you'd also gain parachronal manipulation, which is defined as the ability to manipulate temporal barriers. So specifically the ability to manipulate the things holding the timelines together rather than the timelines themselves. It's arguable that the ability to manipulate the barriers that hold the timelines up is the ability to manipulate the timeline itself, but given that this is indirect manipulation, I can see why this gets its own power. There's also personal time, which is the ability to manipulate one's own timeline specifically, which is kind of weirdly placed all the way up here at the top of the list. But when I looked at the applications, I noticed that this power also grants you any and all temporal abilities, just limited to the scope of your own timeline. Second to last is temporal banishment. Temporal banishment is defined as the ability to banish an object or being and send them outside of time, essentially bestowing them temporal lock or sending them to a completely different timeline. Pretty self-explanatory, although it is interesting that using this ability on a living being could just bestow them with temporal lock by separating them from the time stream and thus keeping their body in that same state. And finally, we have temporal erasure. This is an ability you might think would show up lower on the list. It's certainly not on the level of some abilities that just give you access to every other ability in existence, but the ability to casually erase time on your own merits is definitely worthy of ultimate status. I feel like this power is so self-explanatory that a definition isn't needed here. It's temporal erasure. You erase time. Whether that's all of time or half a second, you're pretty much screwed if you aren't another time manipulator of the same level. Alright, that's all 5 levels of time manipulation explained. No matter which level you're on, time manipulation is always going to be an S tier ability, because like I said before, a time manipulator is just half a reality warper. Like this video, leave a comment about something I forgot to mention or got wrong. The next full-length video I post will be episode 1 of the Caleb City Power Scale, and I know some of y'all are excited for that one, so if you made it to the end of this video, congrats, you found out first. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it, and y'all have a good one.